I recently spoke to climate and queer activist Nyke Slawik. Nyke is a member of the German parliament, and in the interview, we covered a lot of different ground, including her fight to reform transport policy in Germany, along with the battle to phase out fossil fuels, and of course, a bit about her background. So I hope you enjoy the interview, and let me know what you think in the comments. Hey, hi Nyke. It's great to see you today. Thanks for taking your time to be on Movement, and yeah, I hope you've had a pretty good week and it hasn't been too busy.
Yeah, it's already Monday here in Germany. I don't know about Australia. Are you still in your Sunday?
No, it's
So I've already started.
yeah, it's Monday, 6 p.m.
It's
Monday.
the okay, it's the other way around because you said that my week wasn't too stressful. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you. I'm really glad to get this opportunity.
No problem. Well, I think before, like, obviously, congratulations on your election to the Bundestag. It's quite an amazing story. But before we get into that, I thought we might go a bit into your sort of your background. So, like, where do you come from, and where did you grow up? You're a young MP now, and you don't have much time to probably reflect on those things. But yeah, so what part of Germany and did you grow up?
So I'm from Leverkusen in the very west of Germany, close to Cologne, and it's part of a very industrial region. And actually, where I grew up is one of the biggest coal areas in the whole of Europe. And we have several coal mines and hundreds of thousands of people over the last couple of decades who have lost their homes due to coal mining for brown coal. And actually, the region I'm from is it's actually the biggest contributor in terms of carbon emissions. And um, I remember when I was 15 years old, I watched this documentary by Al Gore, An Inconvenient Truth, about the severity of climate change. And it really made me open my eyes that we needed to change the way we are living, and that we need to do right by our planet and the environment. And I just started to look into what was happening in my hometown and the region I'm living in. So realizing that actually the region I live in is one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions in Europe was quite a shocking realization for me. And that was one of the reasons I decided to join the Green Youth and then later on the Green Party to advocate for a quick transition to renewable energies and away from coal. And then another story is what is currently happening in my hometown is that we are extending two highways that are already existing, and the German government is doing this actually all over the country. And it's really insane because it's 2022 and we're right in the middle of this climate crisis. I mean, everybody is talking about it, but when you look into what's actually still happening out there in the world, in our economies, also in our infrastructure planning. Like here in Germany, we still are focused so much on extending our infrastructure for cars and building new roads. And this is something that was a big factor in why I decided to run for parliament, to say we need to change this. And together with the many young people who demanded change for climate justice, was something, yeah, where we as young people said we need to go in this system and really
Yeah.
change something now, because we are losing time.
Yeah, it's quite something. I do you, like that decision. Like I think of my own story. I didn't really think about politics until my late 20s. So for you to do it at that age, were your parents always involved in like different social issues, environmental? Was that something that sort of it was around the household at the time that you thought was that would sort of motivated you to try and address some of these issues that you thought you needed to address?
No, not really. I actually come from quite a working class family, and my parents weren't so involved and interested in politics that much. I just remember being a teenager and us talking about nuclear energy at school, and that was like one of my first contacts to sustainability, because I remember how I was confronted with this question of okay, we're going to have this all of this waste, and it's going to last for thousands of years, not only for my generation but for others to come. And around that same time, it was really quite accidentally that I watched, yeah, I watched this documentary on television, and it was just like this two things where I was thinking as a very young person, well, what are people actually doing to our planet, and what is my life going to be when I'm 80, when I'm going to retire? Is like, is this planet still going to be livable? And what about future generations? And it just felt really, um, it just felt not just, it just felt really unfair by the people and generations who were there before us, um, who made all of these unsustainable decisions. And um, I just thought it wasn't fair, and I kind of felt betrayed, like betrayed that I was being denied my chance to a sustainable future. And I think this is very similar to what has been happening to a lot of young people these days. Uh, the whole people from the Fridays for Future movement, Greta Thunberg, and all the young people protesting for a more sustainable way of living, and for taking the climate crisis seriously. Um, yeah, and this is something that was already so much in place when I was 15 years old, and so I've been doing all of this activism in the last couple of years. And at some point, yeah, I decided to run for parliament.
Yeah. And do you like? And you're the first openly transgender person to be elected to parliament in Germany, in Europe. Did I'm seeing a lot of social issues and environmental issues intersecting at the same time. Did that play a role in your campaigns or your influences? Because obviously there's a lot of challenges with that. Did you find that it was a motivating factor, or did you see the same? It was all a part of the same fight in a way.
For me, it really is part of the same fight, because I feel that so many issues there come together. The way we are producing energy, the way our economy is built, is not only hurtful to our environment and to climate, but also hurtful in the sense that so much of our wealth is accumulated at the cost of the third world. It's hurtful to many indigenous populations. Look at what's happening in South America or in Africa, where the industrial nations are mining for resources that we use here, and we're driving deforestation. And a lot of that is driven by an economy and a system of politics that is predominantly white, predominantly male, and predominantly cisgender heterosexual. So we are having this is a very systemic issue, I think, of that our structures of power are so patriarchal, and it's very hurtful to our planet, but also hurtful to minorities in society. That politics is not actually taking care of minorities. We are seeing a political system that only has been concerned with the questions, with the perspectives of cisgender heterosexual males, and not so much with other people. And this is why we still have so many discriminating laws. This is why I think violence in our societies against women, but also against other minorities, racist issues, transphobic violence. And we see in all of these minorities that people are earning less, that these minorities are hurting, especially queer people, but people who are affected by racism as well, by POC people. They are more often homeless, um, working in bad jobs, not earning a good living. And so this is for me really the thing where it all comes together. This is a struggle for justice and a struggle to change the system, to advocate for a system that does right by all of these people and that does right on our planet.
And it's like looking and like standing back, especially with COVID, hitting us at this time. It's like everything's hitting us at once, and it can be really taxing on a lot of, like, especially when you're involved in campaigning and you care about so many different issues and you care about so many different things. Did you find that that you had a core group of like friends that encouraged you to look when you were making a decision to get involved with the Greens and to get involved in different campaigns? Did you have a mentor or a friendship group that sort of kept you going in that space?
Yeah, I think actually that through politics and political activism, I just met so many amazing and other inspiring people, especially young people that are also active in the Green Youth, where I joined in 2009 already, and many of my friendships actually formed and there. And I met so many amazing, inspiring people. Like one of my friends who has been fighting for saving all of these villages that are endangered by coal mining, trying to save the homes of those people. And I met so many amazing other queer activists fighting for rainbow families and their rights, and trans activists, and all of these people with so much passion, and so much hunger for a better world, a better future. And yeah, many friendships that actually formed in political activism, and people who know what it's like to have this passion to burn for politics, and who are always there for me when I'm sort of a bit burned out or frustrated with how things are going, that I can talk to and who understand the struggle. Because, you know, activist burnout is also a thing in our community, especially among the, I think, younger ones who are so passionate about changing the world, that sometimes you do so much and you're just like going from one protest to another, from one campaign to the next. And especially the COVID time was really um, really a hard phase to go through, because I mean, all the pressing issues went on. Organizing our federal campaign for the elections, for the general election, organizing protests in terms of for climate justice, um, and so on. And you still you couldn't see the people in real life so much anymore, and that was definitely a hard time for us,
Mhm.
I'd say. Yeah.
And do you, like, casting your mind back 10 years ago, do you think a lot of the experiences that you've had along this journey into the parliament, do you think that's helped you? Like, especially getting to parliament in the midst of a COVID pandemic, um, it's a lot of campaigning and a lot of different issues. Is there anything that you look back on, any significant point that you just were like, this is something that I want to throw my everything into to try and pursue a political career?
Mhm. So, what I find really, really interesting about this whole COVID pandemic, and what it really helped me realize, is that it really um, stopped our way of going. I mean, the whole world stopped for a minute, and it just made it possible to realize that actually we can make a change to the way we are living, and that it is possible in politics to um, put very fundamental changes forward, and how important it is to take crises seriously. I mean, we had this virus, this pandemic, and then the government showed us how much action they can actually take if they take something seriously, right? We had all of these measures put in place by all the governments around the globe, and it shows us that we actually can act if we want to. And I think now what we need is to make this shift in our thinking about the climate crisis as well. We need to put drastic action forward, because, I mean, IPCC has warned us that we need to cut emissions by half until 2030. Still, we only had the only real reduction globally happening in the pandemic, because we all had to like sit around at home and um, wait this pandemic out. And yeah, but I think the pandemic actually showed us that it is possible to change something, and that it is really necessary. I mean, you could also talk about how this pandemic is also a result of the of our way of treating the environment, because I mean, many experts, many scientists have warned us that something like this might happen, because these kind of viruses, they spring from animals to humans, and they will become more likely in the ongoing climate crisis, because we're cutting down um, areas for certain animals. We're cutting down areas of living for these animals, and so the whole ecosystem gets out of balance. And this is also a massive factor why these sort of viruses can more easily spring onto humans. And it's really interesting how many scientists are now taking this even further into consideration since COVID happened. So this again is really an interesting a reminder how all of these issues really actually come together, I
Mm.
think.
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of remember looking back, and it was sort of when you read about it, and then it's actually unfolding in front of your eyes, and you're in a bit of disbelief, because there were so many warnings, and and like I do think that I wasn't actually as I don't know whether it sounds bad, but I was actually surprised when it happened. It almost felt like it was something that was it was meant to be, in a way. And I don't know, did you get that feeling when it hit? And you were probably campaigning at the time, I don't know, or preparing for a campaign, but were you surprised at all?
Well, yeah, of course, but at the same time, I had a very similar feeling to what you just described, that sort of it was meant to happen. I mean, we've been warned by the people with expertise. Like they said that this something like this was going to happen at some point. So in the end, it was not that much of a surprise,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, it was. So with just I'm looking at I looked at a bit of your background, and you're on a committee in the parliament to do with you're looking at roads, you're looking at transport. That's something that you've pursued for quite some time, and as you said, obviously the climate issues and everything like that. Have you felt that was that one of your main issues throughout the campaign before being elected? And was that a choice to go into that committee?
Y- Yeah, that was a very conscious choice to go on the transport committee,
Mm,
because it's a huge issue in
mm,
my constituency. We have these two highways that are going to be extended, and people are actually going to lose their homes. And we will have these massive, bigger roads in the middle of the city if the plans of the government are actually yeah, if it's actually happening. So um, I always said that it's just insane, in these times of climate crisis, how we can still build even bigger and bigger roads, because we actually right now need a shift towards climate friendly mobility. And we've had some calculations in Germany that in order to meet just our climate goals, just the promises we made under the Paris Agreement, we need to get almost twice as many people into public transport, and not have them drive around in cars. And so all the experts know this, but of course it's very difficult to advocate for this, um, especially in a country like Germany with one of the biggest car industries. And I mean, so more and more people are realizing that we need sustainable solutions, but at the same time, I think, or actually all the calculations tell you that it will not be enough to just get people into electric cars, just
mm,
because it's not possible to do it as quickly, and just because for the whole infrastructure, you still need so much space, which public transport has not. And So public transport is a very interesting area to work in right now politically, because we're under so much pressure to bring more people into trains, into the subway, into buses. But also at the same time, we have digitalization happening, trying to bring different ways of mobility together, to have rentals, car rentals, bike rentals, these scooters you see in many cities these days, and to just like connect these different ways of mobility, of movement, yeah, to have an alternative for people, not to take a car the whole way. And um, so this is the environmental factor. But what is also really interesting is that in the question of mobility, we have so many pressing issues of social justice, but also questions of anti-discrimination. Um, that there's like many people, people of color, they face sometimes racist violence in the on the subway, in a train ride, or there's queerphobic incidences happening, and then the social questions of that, especially people from the lower wage sector not having a car and relying on public transport. And still, so often the whole debate is in Germany, but I think also in other countries, so much focused on cars. And if we're trying to rethink the whole system, people often, but there's so many people relying on cars to go to their jobs, and what shall they do if they don't have the car? And it's just always this one argument going on and on. And it just often doesn't take into consideration that there's so many people who can't afford a car, who don't afford to pay the bills for their cars, or people who just can't drive a car because they have some form of disability, either mental or physical, and or people who can't pay the cost for getting a driver's license, and all of these questions that are often not taken into account, and they all come together in the whole mobility and transport sector. And this is why it's a really interesting field to work in right now, especially because we have so much to do there right now. Because at least in Germany, I don't know so much about Australia, but here we have seen no reduction in emissions from the transport sector since the 1990s. And so it's a huge gap where we right now have to work on.
Don't worry, we have a we have a similar. It's a cultural thing more than anything. I think it's also driven by the conservative side of politics. You know, we even had a former prime minister here who was very conservative, right about the independence of a vehicle and how that individualism is a great thing through the use of a vehicle. And so there's been, you know, there's that constant battle. And when you talk about getting more people onto trains and so forth, and making public transport more accessible, you find that there's people that have had so much negativity about the issue put in front of them that there's a pushback. Do you find there was much of a pushback in Germany? Like, is there a cultural shift that you're battling at the moment to get people to think more about the benefits of public transport?
Yeah, definitely. I don't, as the thing is that even though we've been talking about these issues for a long time, people are getting more and more cars. It's really bizarre, actually, and it shows you that it's a really pressing issue. At the same time, um, I don't know why that actually is. Maybe it's because of the successful lobbying by the car industry, or I don't know. But having a car and driving your car is always very much glorified, I think, because people often don't see the negative aspects of it, like how much space the cars take up in our cities, that we need these massive roads, the parking spots, and how you could actually have this space in the cities for people or for trees or for parks, and not so much just for cars, because the most cars by people, they just they're meant for mobility, but mm, I don't know, 20 hours a day or 23 hours a day, most cars just stand there. They're just parked somewhere and just blocking all of this space. And people often don't see that when they're in a car, they are confronted with traffic jams. They lose a lot of time by standing in traffic, by having to search for a parking spot, and so on. And actually, when you're on public transport, I mean, there's other issues going on, of course, but you don't have to look for a parking spot. You can just, like, you enter the station and you leave the station where you want to be. And yeah, it's actually way more direct. And in many areas, the services of public transport are already quite good. I mean, there's always way we can do better, and we definitely have to be better in order to make it more attractive, and to get more people in there. But actually, culturally, mm, and the whole idea and philosophy behind public transport, in contrast to cars, is already a pretty awesome idea, I
Yeah.
think. And sometimes I don't know why there's so much resistance against it.
Yeah, it's like it's a strange thing because it's almost as if offering people the a cleaner and cheaper alternative. It's just seems like a crazy idea given like what's been put out there. But you found, you mentioned queer spaces on public transport, and I guess more broadly across Germany. Have you found that like we see every day in the news, especially with the ascension of Trumpism, have you found that there's been an increase in violence or people, like, you know, have you seen a rise in hate crimes and things like that, especially with what we've seen going on in the United States? Has that been a challenge for you in Germany? Is that something that you've been working on as an MP?
Mhm. Yes, so we have seen a rise in the numbers of violence against trans people, queer people, but also racist crimes Since then, but it's a bit tricky sometimes to really know if this is sort of an effect of Trump and Brexit and a right-wing movement, because at the same time, which I find really interesting, is that police and the state and the statistics for a long time weren't really good in actually taking record of this form of hate crime and to really track hate crime. So at least in Germany, we've only just begun in tackling the whole question of hate crime, and that has started a couple of years ago in first starting to monitor hate crime. And I mean, this is really a shocking realization in itself, and scandalous that we haven't actually tracked this for a long time. And so, of course, the numbers are rising, and right now it's not really clear, is this due to some sort of right-wing general political shift we are perceiving? I mean, in Europe, it's also a big issue. If you're looking um, at the fact that since 2017 we have a fascist party again in the Bundestag, in our parliament. And if you see what's happening in Eastern Europe, it's really extreme and frightening. Especially with regards to queer people, like in Poland, which is our neighboring country to the east. They are burning rainbow flags in the streets, on the markets. They are proposing one queer-phobic new law after the other. And the same stuff happening in Hungary. And this is also something I think that has led a lot of younger queer people here and elsewhere on the streets in recent years to protest this and to form political alliances, and was also a major contributor why I decided to run for parliament, because I didn't want to just observe this right-wing development in Germany, but also in other countries, because this is something that has been happening all over the world with some sort of form of backlash. And so at some point I was like, okay, I could decide to go somewhere to sort of escape free this, but where should I go? Because this is happening all over the world, that there's fascist political movements who are trying to capitalize on hate against minorities and to try to build their political agenda on discrimination, hate, and fear. And so I decided I can really just fight this. I cannot go anywhere, and I have to fight this. So right now, what is good, I think, is that many people in politics have actually realized, not only us Greens, as so to say, more the progressive end of the political spectrum, but also the political mainstream in Germany and also many other parts of Europe have realized that this whole neo-fascism and right-wing agenda is a huge, huge threat to democracy and civil society. And so right now we're, as a new government, luckily are proposing way more to do against this sort of backlash. And I think that's very, very important, because we cannot leave the political playfield to these people. It's very important as a democracy, especially this is one of our huge takeaways from German history, that we really have to stand up against these people, and that democracy has to fight those who are trying to abuse democracy in order to destroy it. And we really have to fight the undemocratic within the democratic system. That is really, really important.
Absolutely. And I think it goes to, I think you mentioned across the world, like it's almost as if conservatism in a way has abandoned their own, they used to fight elections on sort of conservative policy, you know, a monetary sort of, you know, reduction in spending and so forth. But it just seems like everything is about a culture war. You know, it's about picking on people and creating that division just to either win elections, which I think has sort of opened the door to some of the worst aspects of society that we haven't seen in the mainstream in such a long time, and politicians have allowed it. Have you found, like, since your election, it must be very, I don't like the word empowering, but the sense that to get into parliament and to face off with these people, like directly, like have you found that has that been something that's been either confronting or something that's really like driven you to really do more?
Actually, it's been very empowering
Yes.
because,
It's a yeah,
because I've just described to you
yeah.
that from 2017 onwards, we've had the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, which is a very right-wing fascist party. For the first time ever since the Second World War, we have a fascist party in parliament, and so they have been dominating the news for a long time, and just had been given this platform to share their backwards values. And so being part of, let's say, being part of the society that they are trying to attack, that they don't see as valuable part of our culture, um, and just feeling very threatened by this and feeling endangered. And we've talked about hate crime and how this is a big issue and how they're basically driving this hate in society. So it felt really, really good now to sit at the table. I mean, of course, it's not so nice to have them there with me. I mean, be much more happier. I would be much happier if they weren't there and just us Greens. But um, so a couple of years ago, we didn't have any trans people in Parliament. We were much less diverse, and now Parliament has become way more diverse. We have way more younger people. We have more women in parliament. For the first time ever, we have two open trans people in parliament. We have, in general, quite a lot of queer people that are open about their gender identity and sexual identity in parliament. One of my colleagues is the first Black woman ever that was elected to the German parliament. And we're this force of our idea of a diverse and more equal society that is now part of part of the Bundestag, part of the parliament, part of the system. And we are the ones that have been talked about, that have been shamed by this agenda of hate. So this this agenda of the right-wing fascists is so often fought on our backs, and they're ridiculing us. They want to go back to a status 50, 100 years ago that would even be more hurtful to minorities. And now now we're now we're also there, and now they have to face us, and this actually feels really, really good,
Hmm.
and that also gives me hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you ever felt um, you're a publicly facing person? You don't shy away from these people. Have you, as an MP, have you ever felt under threat? Like, has that been something that um, it's not easy being in a public facing position where you put your beliefs and the issues that you care about out there. Is that something that you've had to think about, or and how, if you have, like, how have your like your staff and your friends come to support you?
Well, sometimes, of course, sometimes I'm afraid of, because also in Germany, we've seen this in other countries as well. Of course, there are politicians, especially also progressive politicians, that have been victims of hate crime, even people who have been murdered. Um, and sometimes that gives me fear, of course, but at the same time, I've always been a fighter, and I don't want to give these people this power over me, that I live my life in fear. I'm just doing what I think is right, and I'm just going on to fight for a world that I think would be better for so many people and that would be more equal and more just. And I just want to do right by my communities and the people I represent. So um, I won't give those other people the power over me to be threatened or silenced.
Mhm. And how do you, like your family, I touched on just before, um, they're a working class family, and like saying I come from my father was a labourer, and um, my whole family basically working class as well. When I first got involved in politics, my some of my family were like, what are you doing? Like this is not, it's something that you're a construction worker. What are you like? They were in a bit of disbelief, but did you find the same thing? It must be quite a journey for your family as well to see you do the things that you're doing. And how have they been along? Have they been along this journey with you?
Yeah, it was a struggle. It was hard because I can really relate to what you just said. It was difficult for my family at first because I think many, especially working class families and people, are often disappointed by politics because they feel like politics is often not doing right by the people who don't earn much, who don't have good jobs, who are often yeah, disappointed because they feel like politics is not um, having their best interests at heart. And um, but I think it's a huge problem that people, because of that, do not participate in politics. I mean, of course, it's harder for working class people and people from working class backgrounds if you're struggling so much with paying your rent um, and just yeah making a living paying your bills, of course, and then you also have children and you need to take care of your children and stuff like that. If you have all of these survival questions, it's hard to have the time and the energy to invest into political participation as well. And so, my parents and my family, at first, when I started doing political activism, they were really, really skeptical and basically thought it was a waste of time. Um, and over the years, though, they have come to be way more supportive. And right now, actually, my parents are quite quite proud. I think first when I started doing politics, they didn't believe that I would like be elected into parliament or something like that. And now I think they've realized some time ago that yeah, you can actually make a change. You can participate in the system, and even though it's hard and sometimes takes a way to go, you can actually yeah make a change and do something. And this is something they're proud of. And nowadays they really support me a lot, especially when I come back from Berlin and go back home and I've had a really long week. Um, and also some frustrating experiences. I really enjoy to go just to my mom's place and have dinner with her, and she's just there for me and gives me so much, yeah, so much warmth, and that's really really nice thing to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward, earlier in the term, you've only been in the role for a few months. I should say late last year elected. So there's a lot of things to do. What do you hope to achieve in your like, I guess, your first term? Hopefully first of many, but what do you hope to achieve in this term? Is there something that you've really set your goal that you really set your sights on?
Oh, there's just so many issues out there. I think it's really cool that we have this new government now in Germany, because we've had a conservative government for 16 years, which was a really, really long time. And so many progressive issues, environmental issues, have not been stood up for. And the new coalition has agreed on doing some really good stuff. For example, exiting coal in this decade, and also in the areas of queer empowerment, feminist policies. We're doing way more for anti-discrimination. We're changing a lot of laws that are discriminating. We're going to introduce a few national action plans for gender equality, but also for queer people, which is really cool. But all in all, yeah, I mean, what I already talked about in my constituency with these highway extensions, which is also happening in other parts of Germany, and especially the transport sector. I'm just looking at the numbers and what is happening in the world, that CO2 emissions are still rising, and that is something I'm really concerned about. And I think it's better what the new government is doing now, but we still need to be quicker, and we need to do more. And this is something I see as my role as younger MP in Parliament as well. I don't want to be just happy with like what my party has written in the coalition contract for the new government. I just don't want to sit here for years saying, oh, this is great. I want to fight for doing more, because I think we do need more. And I hope that in 4 years' time, more people will have woken up. I think more people are gathering, not only young people, but across all generations, across the globe. And I think the power of our movement is increasing. The Green Party has had its biggest success in the last election, and we're growing in terms of membership, in terms of political approval. And I hope that in 4 years' time, we will have done so much more than we've originally planned right now. And I hope I will prevent these 2 highways from being built in my hometown, and to get more funding, for public transport. That would be my biggest wish. And
I think I watched your 33rd Greens Party Council, and I think you said something along the lines that you hope that, this is before you're elected, after spending some time in Parliament, future generations will kick your ass to make sure that you've done the right thing to hold you accountable. So I think that's quite something to say.
Please.
Yeah, we definitely need more people involved. But I'd just like to say thanks so much for taking the time to speak to me. I do think that your story is quite amazing. And we'll be following your progress through Parliament and the bills and the things that you fight for. I'm sure it's going to be quite significant in history. But before we go, can you recommend a song or a band that you listen to? And I'll pop that in the comments. There's one thing that got me through my time in Parliament, and that was coming home and listening to a record, or chatting to friends about music, because it was something that it was almost like a universal language. So Is there a song that you could recommend for the people listening? Sorry to put you on the spot. Sorry.
I really liked this. I really like this song Underdog. You know it?
Yep.
I've really listened to that a lot when I was campaigning, and
Okay.
I really like the message of the song, and I think it's just really empowering, and it gives me hope. And I just like this song very, very much.
Okay. On that note, thank you so much, and and I hope to speak to you very soon. And yeah, have a great week.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Have a great week.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.